Okay, we're just gonna wait till this recording actually starts. There we go. Good morning. We are in the middle of chapter 42 and lessons in Tanya on page 632. It's around the 25th or 20th of Nisan. So last week, we started chapter 42, in which we laid the groundwork that every Jew has a spark of Moses. And therefore, every Jew is not just capable of having fear of heaven, but it's very accessible to every person. And yet, when we look out, whether at ourselves or those around us, it doesn't seem like everyone is accessing that fear of heaven. And the question is, what's in the way, and what can we do to make it happen? There's famous tale of a Jew. The story goes that there's a shul in Krakow, I think, or in Prague, one of the cities in Poland that has a shul called Isaac's Shul. Why is it called Isaac's Shul? Because Isaac paid for the shul. How did Isaac pay for the shul? He was a poor guy. How did he pay for the shul? So the story goes that one night he had a dream. Let's say he lives in Krakow. He has a dream that in Prague, under a certain bridge, there's a buried treasure. So in the morning, he wakes up, he travels to Prague, he goes to the bridge, he recognizes the layout from his dream, he starts digging, and sure enough, a police officer comes over and says, well, excuse me, what do you think you're doing here? So he said, I had a dream last night that there's a treasure buried right in this exact spot. The guy bursts out laughing. He said, I had a dream last night that there's a guy, Isaac, he lives in Krakow, and under his oven, there's a treasure buried. You think I'm going to go to Krakow and to go into this Isaac's house and to dig for a treasure because I had a dream? Are you crazy? Right away, he puts away his shovel, puts away his tools, goes back home, digs up his oven, which was, I mean, the oven, a house without an oven back then, you were doomed. But he digs up his oven, and sure enough, he finds a treasure hidden underneath the oven. And with the money he received from that treasure, he builds a shul. Well, what's the moral of the story? So there could be many lessons you learn from the story. I think usually the moral of the story that people like to give when they're saying the story is that 99% of the time we convince ourselves, or we're convinced that what's going to make us happy, the treasure for our life, is over there, somewhere else. And really, where's the treasure buried? In our own home, in our own back pocket. But there's also another idea here, and that is, why didn't he go home and just go on with his life? Why did he have to break his oven? I mean, he's got a treasure under there. Why not keep it there? It won't get lost. It won't get stolen. It won't get used up. He'll keep his oven intact, but he has a treasure.
Oh, he might get a new oven.
If he gets a new oven, then he'll dig. But
he can dig. He can dig. Take the
I know, but
treasure.
why get a new oven? His oven works. He's living. He's living fine.
Yeah.
Why dig up the treasure if
Yeah.
if it's safer and more secure being buried beneath?
Can't utilize it though.
Oh, so we got finished discussing last week that every Jew has this spark of Moses. Yeah, I apologize for the flies. There was a camp here Sunday, and when there's 50 kids, the doors get left open.
Oh.
I managed to get most of the flies out. There were probably about 20 that I got out. There are 3 lingering. The last few days, they all stuck to me, so now I get to share the joy of having.
You don't have to worry. They don't eat. They don't eat much.
They might be enjoying other people's odors or. So every Jew has this spark of Moses. And yet we don't always, or we don't, even not always identify with it or recognize it. Why not? If we have it, why not? So the first thing is we first have to recognize that we have it. That was last week. The first foundation Alter Rebbe lays in chapter 42 is that Isaac could have turned to this policeman and said, "Sure, that was your dream, but my dream is that the treasure is here." Yeah, but he didn't. He believed the treasure was where? He got the message the treasure was. In other words, the first step is you have to believe that that you have the treasure. Once you have the treasure, then you dig for it. What happens when you find the treasure? Let's not think of a treasure because that could look like many different things. Let's say you're digging for a precious stone. You dig and you find the stone, right? Does the stone look like a precious stone?
No.
No. Most people may not even know it's a stone, it's a precious stone. What do you have to do to turn the stone that you dug up into a precious stone?
Take it to a jeweler or somebody who knows stones.
But so there are two parts of the process. One is removing all of the impurities, all of the dirt and all the impurities. And then there's a process. You may have to cut the stone in a certain way because the raw stone may not shine or reflect, may not sparkle as well. And then there is polishing. You have to polish it. Yeah. So every Jew is a precious stone. Every Jew is a diamond because we all have this spark of, we have all of an neshama, we have a soul. We also have a spark of the soul of Moses, which is very capable of having this fear of heaven. And nevertheless, we don't access it because it's a stone that's we just learned about it. We just dug it up. It has a lot of dirt on it. It may have a lot of dirt on it. It may have a lot of impurities. It may also need some polishing. So that's what we're going to discuss today. How do we take this stone, this precious stone that we discovered last week we possess, and turn that into a useful part of our lives? So the first stop is going to be to clean it from impurities. The way this is described is let's better visualize it, the body and the soul. What's the stone? The stone is the soul that God put inside of us. But God put the stone inside the body, just like the precious stone is inside the earth. So the body is like the earth. So when you discover that inside your body you have a soul, you have this precious stone. So the first thing is you have to make sure to remove the impurities. Now, that doesn't mean, although many religions may think it means, or many people think within Judaism may think this means, get rid of the body. Whether by abstaining from physical fasting and not getting married or not engaging in the physical world. No, that's not what it means. It means removing the body from being an obstacle to the soul. God created our body that it doesn't have to be an obstacle to the soul. God created the body that needs to eat and needs to sleep, right? But did God create the body in a way that it needs to indulge in eating? No, you can survive without indulging in eating. It doesn't mean it doesn't make you happy. It doesn't mean, but you don't need that to survive. You have plenty of prisoners that have the ability to indulge. You have plenty of countries, plenty of people in the world that can't indulge, and they live perfectly happy, fine lives. So the same thing with sleep, the same thing with anything. What happens? A person, when they're born, they learn to eat. And that usually means more to them than studying Torah, for example, even studying math, whatever it is, academics, anything. So which muscles are strengthened in a person first, his bodily muscles. Once those muscles are strengthened, it's much more difficult to strengthen the muscles of the soul because they seem to contradict the muscles of the body. So if I go through life in its most basic, simple way, I eat my basic necessities, I sleep the basic amount, I indulge in the physical world in the most necessary components. Why? Because the rest of my day is busy helping my parents make a living and then take care of the younger kids and whatever. You know, I live in a third world country or 200 years ago. Then, when I get older and I go off to yeshiva to study Torah, so there's no mind blocks in my head. Because why did I go out to the field 5 o'clock in the morning last week? Because I needed to make a living. Now I'm in yeshiva. I don't need to make a living. So now I wake up 5 o'clock in the morning. Let me study. I don't have the muscle to play video games or to sleep in or to spend an hour preparing a breakfast. I don't have those muscles. The problem is when we develop those muscles. Developing those muscles are not necessary. Because they're not necessary, therefore those muscles contradict the soul. So let's crystallize this one step. It's hard to get up in the morning and go to shul. Let's say shul starts 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30. It's hard to get up and go to shul 6:30 in the morning. Why is it hard? It's hard because, not because I have to work. It's hard because I train myself that I need to work as much as possible to make as much as possible. It's not possible for a person to, again, just from a Torah perspective, it's not possible that a person needs to go to work 6 o'clock in the morning and not be able to go to shul. Because God doesn't give you something that you can't do. You convince yourself, I need to make more money so I should be able to put some away so I should be able to live when I'm 90 years old. Fine, if you're able to, fine. But if that gets in the way of going to shul, that's not a necessity. So why does it become a block? So going to work doesn't contradict prayer. That can't. God said 6 days a week you shall work. Going to work can't contradict prayer. Going to work more than I need to contradicts prayer. The same thing with going to work on Shabbos. Going to work on Shabbos can't contradict Shabbos. Can't. Going to work can't contradict Shabbos. Going to work on Shabbos can contradict Shabbos because it's something I decided I need to do. There's a tale. I don't know if it's a good story. That there was once a yeshiva student. He'd wake up every morning. He was punctual on time. He'd come to yeshiva in yeshiva in the morning, 7:30 till 8:30 is an hour of studying Chassidus. Sometimes even an hour and a half. 7 to 8:30 studying Chassidus. Then there's a break for 15, 20 minutes. Then is davening for an hour. Then is breakfast. Then is studying for the rest of the day. So this yeshiva student would be 7 o'clock every morning. He was sitting there. He'd learn for an hour and a half, and then he'd pray. He looked like a star student. And then once the afternoon started, but once the morning classes started after breakfast, some days he would come, some days he wouldn't come, some days he'd stay the whole thing, he'd leave in the middle. No consistency. Every year for your birthday, you had an opportunity to have a private audience with the Rebbe. Before that, you had to get a note from the yeshiva, like a report card. And the report card would be given in before you went in. When you came in, the Rebbe had your report card. And his report card said, Chassidus in the morning and davening, A+. The rest of the day, mixed reviews. So the Rebbe turns to him and asks, what's going on? So he said, breakfast. What he meant was, when he wakes up in the morning, he's focused. He knows he has to go learn, he has to daven. Then he comes to breakfast, and he sits down, and he, gets involved. And now, Now it's not as exciting to go and to go learn. Now he could spend a few more minutes in the kitchen, so he comes a few minutes late, and then an hour and a half later, he wants a snack, so he goes out and gets a snack, and then he stays out for a few extra minutes. The ripple effect is obvious. In other words, the first step of revealing the precious stone is removing the dirt, but it doesn't mean removing the body. It's very important. Judaism does not believe in removing the body. But we believe what we want to accomplish is removing the body as long as it's an obstacle to the soul. The basic needs of the body cannot be an obstacle to the soul. Otherwise, God wouldn't make us need to eat, sleep, and work. But the indulgence in them, whatever that means, indulgence does not necessarily mean nonstop eating to the level of addiction. It means anything beyond what's necessary that can become a hindrance to the soul because now I have a dual allegiance. Why would I spend time focusing on my soul when it's much more enjoyable and easier and in my face when I invest in life? So obviously the best is don't indulge the body. But for most of us, most grown people, that ship has sailed. We've spent time during our lives indulging the body. So how do we rectify that? How do we clean the precious stone from the indulgence of the body? So we already learned in chapter 29 in Tanya that the body and soul is like a candle and a flame, right? And just like if you have a piece of wood, candle doesn't mean wax candle. Candle means any material that you're trying to ignite. So let's say the candle is a log. So you try to light a log. If it's very thick, it's not going to light. That's what the Rebbe says there, quotes from the Gemara. If a person's body is so, in Yiddish say grub, so thick, but like so coarse, so so overused that the light of the soul doesn't ignite, doesn't catch. What do? Remember what you do to the body if the light doesn't catch? What do you do to a log if the light doesn't catch? If the flame doesn't catch, what do you do to the log?
Get some kindling.
So that's one option. What if you don't have kindling option? You're in the middle of the forest. You break it into smaller pieces. You break it. What does it mean to break it? Break it doesn't mean that you break it that there's no body anymore. Then you wouldn't have kindling material. So we're not advocating breaking the body, denying the body, but breaking it to the point that it fulfills its function of being a body, of being a tool for the soul, not by being the primary. Now, how do you break the body? So there are three ways of breaking the body. One is God can break the body. And that's how Judaism sees when God brings punishments, what we call punishments. When a person goes through trials and tribulations in life, when someone gets ill, doesn't have means, or any other issue in life, that's God breaking your body so that your soul will have easier time catching on to the body. Then there are other people. There's a view someone thing. We see someone else, we try to put them in their place. Especially if someone's far off. We have interventions. What's an intervention? An intervention is people coming and being, in the eyes of the beholder, unkind. Right? They're breaking the person, but really, what are they doing? They're turning the person back into a person. They're trying to turn the person back into a person, back into a functioning human being. That's what you're doing when you're breaking the log. You can't turn the log back into a tree. That ship has sailed. You're trying to turn the log into a useful log by breaking it. So by having an intervention, other people come. Yes, they say harsh things. They speak in a harsh way. Sometimes the person can feel very hurt. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to turn the person back into a functioning human being. Both of these options, God breaking the person and his friends breaking the person, both may accomplish the desired result. But the best way of accomplishing the desired result, the most perhaps difficult, but painless, I shouldn't say painless, the least pain involved way is when the person breaks themselves. In other words, they themselves recognize, wow, I don't recognize myself anymore. I gotta get in shape. And they think deeply and critically. And it's painful, but it's not as painful as being plagued with a cancer from God or with an intervention from all your friends that you love that coming in and confronting you. And you make a proper assessment and you decide, I got now I have to do something about it. This is the best way of doing it. Yeah. This is what the Alter Rebbe wants us to do, is to recognize we have this diamond. The reason why we don't see it is because it's just came out of the ground. It's dirty. It's been absorbed in our body for so many years. It's been in the ground for so long that all of the schmutz has gotten stuck to it. And now let's figure out a way of cleansing it, of removing the impurities, removing the body's hold on the soul. Not removing the body, but the body's hold on the soul. So let's see. Let's go back in Tanya. Now, we really got to the last paragraph. Let's reread the second, in the middle of page 632, right where we have the 25th of Nisan. Page 632 in the lessons. This capacity and this quality of attaching one's das to God. Am I the only one that's a little warm in here?
No, I'm fine.
Because I never turned on the air today. It was 70 when I came in here, but now I see the temperature rising. Let me just if it gets cold, let me know. This capacity and this quality of attaching one's das to God so that he not only understands but also feels godliness and so becomes wholly united with him is present every soul of the house of Israel by virtue of his nurture, Yanika, literally suckling, from the soul of our teacher Moses, peace unto him. Okay, so now this is the bombshell. Every Jew has a piece of Moses in him. How come I don't see that? Only since the soul has clothed itself in the body, not itself, God did this, but God enclosed the soul in the body. It needs a great and mighty exertion, doubled and redoubled, in order to feel and be attached to God. What is this double exertion? So the first is the exertion of the flesh. That's what we just discussed. The first is the exertion of the flesh to throw off the bodily shackles, to pound the body. In other words, to weaken its corporeality and gain its submission so that it shall not obscure the light of the soul, thus making it possible for one to understand and feel godliness. As has been mentioned above in the name of the Zohar, that a body into which the light of the soul does not penetrate should be crushed. This being accomplished by means of penitential reflections from the depths of the heart, as is explained there. Right? I think it's quite obvious, quite simple, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
If anyone doesn't understand, there's a question, you let me know. There's a famous story. It's brought down in the previous Rebbe's talks. When we're in yeshiva, we're taught the story. Classmate of mine the story happened with his grandfather when the revolution, the winds of revolution in Russia started, not in the teens, but in the 1890s, in the late 19th century, when the first wave of revolution started. I think it was eventually quashed by the Tsar, but then it did create some reforms and some things. That was sort of the height of the revolutionary in the whole world, the atmosphere of revolution. So the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, also made a revolution. He established a Chabad yeshiva for the first time. Yeshiva is a yeshiva. It's a yeshiva, you go study Torah. What makes a yeshiva Chabad yeshiva? That you study this designated time to study Chassidus. That's, yeah, which no other yeshiva had. When you got married, then you started studying Chassidus in a regular way. But as a yeshiva student, you studied Torah. You studied the Gemara. You studied the Jewish law. That was the study in yeshiva. But more importantly, the Rebbe Rashab wanted a yeshiva that would be able to fight the winds of revolution, fight the winds of assimilation. And that demanded a whole other caliber, a whole other level. This is 20 years approximately before communism. Later, it became evident that those Jews who remained Jewish in the Soviet Union were these students of this yeshiva that went around. 95% of them either got killed or left the Soviet Union. And then the remaining were the remnants of this yeshiva mindset. So one student came to the yeshiva and he wanted to be accepted. So the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe at the time, saw the Bocher and he realized, this student, and he saw that there's no real English course. There's no English way of describing it besides to say he had a beautiful soul with a very well-established body. Let's just say that. Okay? Body, I don't mean large. I mean very well-grounded bodily side to him, but a beautiful soul. So what do you do with such a person? You figure out a way to get the body out of the way. That the body shouldn't, again, not no body, but the body shouldn't contradict the soul. So for the first, this was in the summertime, late summertime. For the next few, or maybe it was in the wintertime. For the next few weeks, the Rebbe Rashab told his son, the previous Rebbe, who was then like the principal of the yeshiva, to load this boy up with responsibilities. He became responsible for setting up in the dining room for meals and other things connected to the yeshiva, cleaning for Pesach and arranging the matzah bakery times. Also, he had to review many Hasidic discourses and he had to be by all classes. In other words, they put a tremendous amount of physical strain on the student. He had no time to think about himself. It wasn't like he worked on himself not to ignore the needs of his body in place of the wants of his body in place of the soul. He had no time. On the first night of the Seder, before the Rebbe had his own Seder, he came to the yeshiva to look at how the yeshiva students were having their Seder. And when he came in and he saw this boy, so he turned to his father. We know this story not from the boy. We know the story from the previous Rebbe describing this event. He didn't know what was going on. Yeah? The previous Rebbe writes, his father turned to him and he said, now you could see the face of a human. You could see of Adam, like that he's not, you could see a different person. On his face, you were able to see a different person. I think you could see this even to a certain degree. You could see it even perhaps some of our children, some of the people you may know a child or someone, even an adult, that up until a certain point in their life were very immature, not in a baby, but just didn't take life seriously. And then one time you see them and they look like a different person. They look like a changed person. Suddenly things, right? Probably when your children became parents, you saw this change or whatever it was, you saw like a shift. You see a different face, a different person. They don't think about themselves anymore. Now they think about their kids. Or they get a job, now they're thinking about their responsibilities. It's a different face. So that's the first job. The first job is we have to make the body look different. Think different. The body has to think, I need to do what's demanded of me, not what I want to do. What's needed for me. Then we come, now you have a clean soul. And yet, the soul still may not shine. Just like the stone, when you take it out of the ground, even after you clean it, it still may not sparkle, it may not shine. It may look very disproportionate, it may not look nice yet. Now comes the polishing, the cutting and the polishing stage. We have to polish the soul. Let's take a metaphor from wisdom or intelligence. Is a person born with intelligence or not?
Intelligence?
Yeah. Most people are born with some level of intelligence. Does that mean that the person who's born with a lot of intelligence will end up being a very smart, learned person, and someone who's born with not so much intelligence will never become a smart, learned person? No. You have to first of all, you have to exercise the muscles. So even someone who's born with a genius IQ may become one of the stupidest people to ever live because he just doesn't, just wastes his time all his life. You can also have someone that's born with not such a high IQ, but he dedicates his life and devotes himself, and he can end up becoming a better speaker and a better teacher than someone who is 100 points IQ higher than him, right? In other words, yes, you do need to be born with something, but that's not enough. And you see the same thing with Torah. Or the famous story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is 40 years old, and he sees the water dripping on the stone and making a hole in the stone, and he realizes if persistent dripping of water can make a hole in a stone, Torah can make a hole in my head that's like a stone. If you take a stone and put it under the Niagara Falls for a minute, will it make a hole in the stone? No. All the drips of water that fell on the stone for years doesn't come close to being under Niagara Falls for a minute. And yet, persistency creates a hole in the stone. Learning Torah, it's not enough to go 1 year to yeshiva and to throw yourself in. It's not enough. You need to constantly devote yourself to it. The same thing is when we want to polish this soul, this spark of Moses that we have within us. It needs effort, it needs work, it needs consistency. And now, here already there's differences between people. Just like in intelligence, someone who's born with a high IQ, even though they also need effort to become a good teacher, let's say, or to become a good student, to become a knowledgeable person, the effort that's demanded to do that is much less than the effort that's going to be demanded from the person with the low IQ. That's just, yeah. Now, they may have struggles in other areas in life. They may not have social skills. They may not have, may have control issues or other issues. Everyone has their package that they have to deal with. But when it comes to any specific area, you're going to have a spectrum. You're not going to have every person the same. The same thing is with spirituality. Some people are just more prone to identifying with and being able to recognize spiritual ideas, spiritual concepts. 2 + 2 = 4 is a spiritual concept, right? It's a concept, it's an idea. Most kids need 2 apples here and 2 apples here to get 2 + 2 = 4. And you have some brilliant kids that don't even need the 4 apples, right? They just get it. The same thing with Judaism. Some people just get it. Some people need work. And in that spectrum, every person is different. You have billions of different levels because you have billions of different people. So it's not that big of a stretch to understand why the fact that we're saying every person has access to this precious stone and has fear of heaven, why not everyone has it, or not everyone experiences it the same way. We're all different. But we need to polish it. Besides getting rid of the obstacles, we need effort to strengthen its own muscles, to polish itself. And in this way, every person is different. Every person needs a certain amount of time a day, or a certain amount of focus time, or a certain amount of seclusion or some people need to be in a shul to feel the spirituality, to be around other people. Some people need to be alone. Some people need to be alone once a week. The rest of the week they're in shul. Some people need to be in shul once a week, and the rest of the week they're alone. Every person is different. What's similar is that every person needs to consistently work on it. Because what might come obvious to you today as a teenager, when you're 25 years old, it doesn't speak to you anymore. And then when you're 35 years old, it doesn't speak to you either. I can tell you, studying Tanya, I studied Tanya in high school. Well, 8th grade and 9th grade, we studied Tanya. Now, we studied Tanya every day as part of our daily study, but with classes and tests, I studied it in high school. What's the promise of Tanya? The promise of Tanya is this will answer any question you have about serving God, about being a good Jew. Any question you have, any difficulty you have, will be answered in Tanya. What does Tanya bring you to? Bring you to be a Beinoni. That's the goal, right? Well, the goal is to be a tzaddik. The fact is, we'll never be a tzaddik, but that should be the desire, right? We should want to be a tzaddik. What happens when a 15-year-old learns a book which promises the answer to every question and says being a Beinoni is accessible to everyone? This is for everyone. And then you look out into the world and you say, who's a Beinoni? Beinoni, well, one person in a generation is a Beinoni. So what does this all have to do with me? Nothing. The next time I learned Tanya seriously was probably 10 years later. And even then, it's not as serious as I'm learning it now when I have to teach it. There's different ways of experiencing something. And if it's not a constant effort, a consistent effort, and you get stuck in the way you saw something when you were a teenager, then that's not accomplishing anything today. But what is true is every Jew can relate to that. Every Jew can access this precious stone. The question is, how many minutes a day and how many days are you going to have to work on polishing it? And what happens when you polish a stone today and you leave it sitting for a year? You need to polish it again. And it's going to be much harder to polish it in a year if you didn't touch it for a year. Better polish it once a week or once a day. Even though we dust the bookcases, yeah. When you have to dust it every Friday, sometimes it gets boring. It feels you because if you dusted it last week, this week it doesn't seem like it needs to get dusted again. What happens when you leave it for a few months? Now dusting doesn't work anymore because it's in the corners and it's stuck already, and now you need to work harder. Let's see. 21 Nisan for a leap year. That's what we're holding. The last paragraph of 633. And the second, so the first exertion was the exertion of the flesh. The second is the exertion of the soul, to reveal the powers of the soul, that the service of exerting one's thought not be burdensome to it, to delve into and reflect upon the greatness of God for a long and uninterrupted period. The only way this can be unburdensome is if it happens more often than not. For this measure of time necessary to immerse oneself in a godly concept in order to arouse love or fear of God is not the same for every soul. Some people require more time, others less time. Where we learned that different souls come from different worlds, right? Atzilos, Bria, Yitzir. So depending on which world your soul comes from, you have more access and more, you're more aloof and more able to, it's easier to be in touch with that. There is the naturally refined soul, which immediately upon considering the greatness of God attains a fear and dread of him, as is written in Shulchan Aruch Chaim, section 1, that when a man reflects in the very first section, in the very first thing a person is supposed to do in the morning after saying Moda Ani, to think that God is standing over him. So he says, when a man reflects that the great king, the supreme king of kings, the Holy One, blessed be he, with whose glory the whole world is filled, stands over him and sees his actions, he will immediately be overcome with fear, get out of bed, and get on with his day. For some people, that's all it takes. A reminder God's on top of me, suddenly they're obedient. It's as if their father is standing on top of them, or it's as if their spouse or their child, whoever else they're scared of disappointing or of being a failure in their eyes. So that's one type of soul. Then there is a soul that is of a lowly nature and origin, coming from the lower gradations of the 10 Sefirot of Asiya, which is the lowest world, and it is unable to discover godliness by contemplation, except with difficulty and forceful insistence. Especially if the soul is not only of a lowly nature by nature, but by nurture. But in addition, it had been defiled by the sin of youth, for one's sins interpose between a Jew and God, as is written in Sefer Hasidim. So not only does his soul come from a lower place, he spent his life dealing with lower things. Nevertheless, it's still possible. Sure, it may take more effort, but it's still possible. Nevertheless, with difficulty and with forceful effort, when his thought greatly exerts itself with vigor and great toil and intense concentration, immersing himself in contemplation of the greatness of God for a long time, there will certainly come to him at least the lower level fear referred to above. Remember, that's the level of fear that demands obedience. That's the basic. In other words, enough to prevent them from doing something which is opposed to God's will. There was once a chassid that came to the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, with his son, and he asked for a blessing that his yiras shamayim, his fear of heaven, should come automatically. That Tzemach Tzedek became serious, and he said, for 50 years, my grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, and myself have been working that things shouldn't come automatically. And you want a blessing that it should come automatically? Now let me ask you a question. So we said at the beginning that this Jew, Isaac, he went home. As soon as he heard that this police officer had a dream that in Isaac's house in Krakow, there's a treasure, he went home. One of the things I said is that besides the effort necessary to uncover the treasure, the first thing is you have to believe that you have a treasure, right? What happens if you're not sure if you have the treasure? So there are two different types of companies digging for gold or for precious metals, right? One that knows it's there, one that speculates. Even if you know it's there, you don't know exactly how far down it goes. So at what point, after how much effort and not reaching gold, do you stop and say, that's enough? Either we've exhausted it or there's nothing here. At what point? Depends. Depends how much money you have. Depends how much determination you have. But at some point, after not finding something, you are going to stop. What if you know there's more gold here? Is there a point at which you will stop?
No.
Well, if you run out of money, you'll stop, but you won't give up the rights to the land. You'll wait till you have more money to dig, right? You're not going to stop, in theory, because you know it's there. What if you're not sure it's there? You may stop even with plenty of money left, even with plenty of resources left. Why? Because you're not even sure, is it worth the investment? Therefore, the first and foremost thing that we need to understand before we try implementing this in our lives is, do we actually believe it's there? If I believe that when the verse in Deuteronomy says, fear of heaven is accessible to you, and it's simple, if I believe that's true, then it doesn't matter if it hasn't worked for 75 years. I'm still going to continue trying because I believe it's there. There could be one of two explanations. Either I didn't work hard enough or I didn't work smart enough, but it's there. No, it's either I have to change tactics or I have to work harder, but it's there. If it's there, I'm not stopping just because I haven't found it yet. Right? Someone works very hard to make a living, to support his family, and it's not working. So there are two possibilities. Either it's the wrong job or you're not working hard enough. A thinking person is either going to switch careers or he's going to invest more time and effort. But he's not going to say, okay, I can't make it work. So that's it. I'm going to stop working and who knows what will happen. You're not going to stop because you believe that it's possible, that the possibility is there. The first thing is we have to believe, and it's not a faith thing. It's because, we've said many times, Tanya, the Alter Rebbe proved it. When push comes to shove, when God challenges you with life or death, and life is denouncing your connection to God, a Jew will choose death. In other words, the Jew has the neshama. So we don't need proof that it's there. We need faith because we don't see it. We don't feel it. But the proof is there. If we can know that, like we discussed last week, if we can know it, if it could be real by us, and we know that it's there, then everything else comes easy. But now I want to bring you back to another question I asked at the beginning. Why does, someone answered the question, well, if I know it's there, why do I need to work hard to uncover it? I have it. And what was the answer?
Can utilize it.
Can utilize it. It's worth nothing if you have it. Who cares if you have it? If it's not helping you become a better person or it's not helping you live your life, then that's worthless, even though I possess it. And therefore, if push comes to shove, it may uncover. But if I don't have, see, the treasure in the ground, I only have to look for it once I need it. Let's say this Isaac was doing well off, was doing fine. He may not have broken his oven. He may have kept that in his mind that if the day comes and I'm replacing the oven, I'll dig. Or if the day comes where I lose my job and I need money, then I'll look for it. But right now, why should I ruin something nice? But we have the luxury to do that. Why? Why do we have the luxury to do that with a physical object? Because if I don't get it today, I'll get it in a year from now. But here, every day we don't try to polish the stone, what happens? It gets dirtier. And our work becomes harder. Every day we push off. Imagine, and I don't want to read anyone's mind, but I imagine, even those of us sitting around the table, there's some mitzvah, and a mitzvah doesn't have to be a ritual mitzvah, but some mitzvah that we'd love to do or get good at, but right now I'm not interested in putting in the effort. Or right now I'm not ready to make that sacrifice. I'll give you an example. Let's say coming to shul on Shabbos, yeah? So I'd love to come on shul on Shabbos, but it happens to be 10 o'clock Saturday morning. I have a business meeting. I have some scheduled thing. It's only going to happen for another 3-4 years. Then it's going to stop or it's going to be rescheduled. Then I'll start coming to shul. Why should I break a good thing now to come to shul? I'll wait 3 years to get into it. The problem is when we come to these types of things, waiting 3 years will make it 3 years harder to accomplish it, right? In other words, here, we need to put in the effort, and we need to put it in. The earlier we put it in, the easier it'll be. But again, we have to believe that through effort we'll accomplish something. In other words, that there is a stone there, and that if I dig hard enough and smart enough, I will access it. I will find it. Let's see here on page 636. And as the rabbis of blessed memory have said, if a man says, I have labored and I have found, believe him. The whole statement in the Talmud is if a person says, I have labored and have not found, don't believe him. If a person says, I have found and not labored, don't believe him. If a person says, I have labored and found, believe him. Now, it seems to be a very, very strange statement. What does it mean if a person says, I labored and haven't found, don't believe him? You worked hard for something, you didn't accomplish it. Why shouldn't I believe you? Because what's the complaint really? Not I worked hard and I didn't get it. I worked hard enough and I didn't get it. Yeah? Don't believe him. No, if you worked hard enough, you would have gotten it. Yeah? The person says, I found it, but I didn't work hard. Don't believe. What do you mean don't believe him? He found it. What are you not believing exactly? Yeah, but you didn't find it. What does it mean to find something? It means to find something more than what you worked for. That's finding, right? Earning a paycheck, you don't say, I found the paycheck. What do you say? I found something in the street because I didn't work for it. And if you didn't work for it and you found it, yeah, that means that it's more than what you worked for. You didn't work for anything. You didn't deserve anything to begin with. So you found something good, but it might be a penny. Is that really what you want to find? Or you want to find something great? So you have to work. And then you get what you earned, and then you find something even greater. That's worthwhile. That's a worthwhile find. Finding a penny in the street isn't a worthwhile find. A person that goes treasure hunting and they find pennies, they're looking for stuff and they find pennies. Is that the find that they call found? Or when they find something they didn't expect to find, that's when they say, I found it. That you didn't expect to find it. That's the finding. If you didn't work, you're not going to find something you didn't expect. If you work hard, then you'll find something you didn't expect. It is also written, with regard to the success one achieves when he labors to attain the fear of God, if you seek it like money and search for it as forbidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of God. Right? Because when you work hard for it, then you'll find it. This means, in the manner of a person seeking a hidden treasure buried in the depths of the earth, for which he digs with tireless toil, for he knows that it is surely buried there. This is not like the guy who's searching for his wallet in the front of the house, and someone comes and asks him, "Where's the last place you saw it?" And he says, "I saw it down the block last." He's like, "Why are you looking here?" He said, "Because the light's here," right?
Yeah.
So it's not like this. Here, you know the treasure's here, either because your father told you he buried it or you buried it here many years ago. You just don't know the exact. So you're digging around, you know it's there. So you're going to dig with tireless toil. So must one delve with unflagging energy in order to reveal the treasure of the fear of heaven, which lies buried and concealed in the understanding of the heart of every Jewish individual. And this understanding of the heart being of a quality and level transcending the limitations of time. And this is the natural hidden fear referred to above. This is what we know we have, and with enough toil and persistent toil, we will find it. Oh, however, in order that it should be translated into action, that the fear of heaven should be translated into action in the sense of fear of sin, so that one will turn away from evil in deed, word, and thought. Remember, that's the bottom line is that we shouldn't sin in thought, speech, or action. That's the bottom line. That's the objective. How do you get there? So we said the basic component you need is a basic fear of heaven, a basic obedience. Obedience only comes when you're afraid of something. Afraid doesn't mean you're afraid of a monster. Afraid can mean you're afraid of repercussions. You're afraid of disappointment. You could be afraid of anything. But the component we're looking for is the obedience part of it, even if there's no actual fear. Yeah. Let's say a kid who goes to school and he's not actually scared of his teachers, but he knows he should be. Because he knows if the teacher catches him, he's going to be in trouble. He never experienced trouble. So he's not actually afraid, but he knows he's supposed to be. That's good enough. Like we said last week, it's enough to have that level of fear, even just in your mind, that creates obedience. One needs to bring it to light from the hidden depths of the understanding of the heart, where it transcends time, and to place it within the realm of actual thought that is in the brain. This means immersing his thought in it for a lengthy period of time. Again, for some people it could be longer, some people shorter, until its effect will emerge from the potential into the actual, so that it affects the soul and body of man. So that he will turn away from evil and do good in thought, speech, and action. Because of God, who looks and sees, hears and listens, perceives all his deeds, and searches his kidneys and heart. As the rabbis of blessed memory said, reflect upon three things and you will not come to sin. Know what is above you, an eye that sees and an ear that hears. So what's fear of heaven? Fear of heaven is a result of meditation that there is a heaven, that there is a higher power. If there is a higher power, then I better be careful with what I do. Even if I don't know if there'll be a punishment or not. But if there is a structure here, then I have to be more thoughtful, more careful. This is the lower level fear that we discussed, that we've been discussing. Again, we're going to get to a higher level fear later. But the basic first, because before the higher level fear, then comes love. As we mentioned in the beginning of this discussion, we said, what's a better way to get to obedience, love or fear?
Fear first.
But what did we all speculate? What's a better way? We thought love, right? Wouldn't you want to be obedient to someone to listen to them out of love? Wouldn't that encourage you? Sure. But then what happens in the times when I'm not feeling it? I know the person loves me and I'm not feeling it. So they say, you know what? I won't do it this time. They won't care. They love me anyway. So if you really want obedience, then you need to introduce first a basic level fear. This is the basic level fear we're talking about that every person has access to. Every person with a little more meditation, a little less meditation, a little more practice, a little less practice. Every person can access this to the point that there isn't a sin, thought, speech, and action that they are willing to do because they're not willing to mess up the relationship. They're not willing to mess up their future, whatever it is, whatever you tell yourself, you're not willing to do. That's enough to create a basic level. Now we're going to, afterwards in Tanya next, we're going to get to love. And then we're going to get to a higher level fear that comes above that. It comes after that and comes, okay. I think we'll pause here. It's a good place to pause. And we'll continue next week, I believe. Yeah, we're just gonna
That's a lot.